Hi, I'm Jen Rich, and this is my story. Growing up, I believe my parents said I was in church the first Sunday after I was born, and um, it was every Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night, and any other night or day that there was something at the church. All of our family went to the same church. My aunts and some aunts and uncles and grandparents, and um, it wasn't really optional as I was growing up whether to go or not. I think I was like 8. I was sitting in church. I think it was a Sunday night, and I think I was bored, and I was sitting there like because we didn't have kids church. Like you just of the nighttime, you just sat in the service with your family, and but I remember they were like singing a song, and I don't know the song, but I just remember like I just started crying, and I was like something inside me, I just started crying, and I was like, I don't know, like what's going on or whatever, and like I don't know if it was the pastor or if it was one of the people like singing or whatever was like said something like, while we were singing this, like, I don't know, something like God was speaking to someone about something, I don't remember the exact words. I was like a kid or whatever, and I was just like, oh, because I remember going to my mom because I was like crying, and she was like, what's wrong? Like she thought something was wrong or whatever, and I like went forward like when they said that, and found a group of friends even in college that had the same. I mean, basically, my close friends had the same beliefs that I did, and we had the same convictions as far as like partying and drinking and that kind of stuff. And so it actually like it wasn't hard, and I don't take that for granted, and I am thankful that I had a family that I know it was hard like for them when I moved out of the house because I could have stayed at home, but I know that they were like praying over me, like my parents, my grandparents. I had great grandparents still alive then, and that were strong, like men and women of faith and of prayer. And I know they were praying over me. And I know that if I didn't have that background, I think that the challenge it would have been more challenging.
Hi, I'm Doug Rich, and this is my story. I was in church pretty much every Sunday. Um, as a kid, we had kids' church on Wednesday night, and so we were always at kids' church. Um, except during the summer, there was no kids' church during the summer, and so we it was just pretty much once a week then. Other than maybe some family events, things like that, we'd pretty much be in church every week. Um, I was always involved with all the kids' church stuff, singing in the kids' choir, and we'd put on a play every year. I'm sure there were a couple of years when I had speaking parts. Um, Youth group, uh, I was always at youth group. I don't ever remember rebelling against the expectation that I was going to go to church stuff. Um, I don't remember it being optional, but I don't ever remember rebelling against it. So I remember going to some kind of youth event when I was in church, and they talked about getting saved, and I'm like, oh yeah, I've never done that, so I put up my hand. All it meant was I got cold pizza and didn't get to sit with my friends to eat it. So, but nothing really changed. It was just like, oh yeah, I better check that box. Um, but when I was going to church with Jen, and I can't even tell you if it was a Sunday night service, Sunday morning service. I don't even remember. But one point during a service, God really got a hold of my heart, and I went up to the front of the church and kneeled down to pray, and recognized for the first time in my life probably that I really needed Jesus as my Savior. He wasn't just the Savior of everybody. I needed him to be my Savior. So when I went away to college, uh, I didn't go to church. I didn't seek that out. Until I really started, you know, hanging out with Jen, I was pretty much drifting. Um, I was never really, it was never really a personal relationship with Jesus or a personal relationship with God until I recognized my need for a Savior. Everybody told me how, that I was good and it was all good, and I went through all the motions and did all the things I was supposed to do, and so it didn't feel like something I needed.
She had pancreatic cancer, and most people people know the statistics for that. Like, you don't usually survive, and if you do, it's not for long. And so I remember when she had her surgery on Halloween, and I remember sitting in that hospital and with my dad and my sister. I don't know, I think my grandparents were there, maybe. I don't remember who else was there, but I just remember, like, the surgeon came out after the surgery, and he was like there was no one else left. It went kind of late, and we'd been sitting in this waiting room forever, and he came out, and he was like, started talking to us, and drawing pictures, and, explaining things or whatever, and he said to us, he was like, her body reacted the way that your body should when you get this, but people's don't, and that's why we don't catch it, and that's why it, like, goes so long. But they're like, he's like, but hers did, and so they were able to, remove like 2/3 of her pancreas, and she was able to keep enough, and she went through a lot of chemo when it was over, and I think this year will be 11 years ago. Like, she's still alive, and like the statistics for that are like, there aren't much. God wasn't done with her. Like, he had plans for her, and he's involved in her church and doing a lot of stuff and reaching people, and I know that she'll keep doing it until her time's up. So, growing up, and they're like, when you're, I don't know, you're in different places, and they're like, go to someone and share your testimony and share your story, and I'm like, I don't like really have one, and God, like, really checked me on that, like, not that long ago, just because I never, I wasn't tempted, like, with alcohol. Like, my family was hit, like, head on by a drunk driver when I was, like, in middle school or something. So, like, my family didn't drink alcohol, but certainly after that happened, I was, it really helps you not have those sort of temptations. I was never tempted to do drugs or whatever, but then, like, God checked me. He's like, you do have a story. He was like, you've been through things, you've done things, and what about, like, all the kids growing up in church? Like, you could encourage them so that they don't do those things, and they don't walk away, and they can see how your life's been blessed. I mean, I didn't even know if I'd be able to have kids, because I, like, have I don't want to say illness, but something wrong, okay? And so I didn't even know if I'd be able to have kids, and I wound up, like, having two, and really wanted another one, and then it took a long time to get pregnant, and then I had a miscarriage, and I was devastated, and I was just like, but God blessed us, and we got Maggie. So, God's like, you do have a story.
The amazing thing that happens when you tell a story is you give them a glimpse into your life. You give people a little better understanding about you personally, not you as your role or you as your responsibilities, but you as a person. And I think, I'm confident that God put this thing inside of us to connect to